Welcome to Carly Noble Art painting tutorial. This is what we're going to be painting. I took this picture in Botswana a couple years ago, so you can use this point in the video to come back to for your reference. So we're going to be doing a watercolor paper painting on 9x12. If you don't have 9x12, that's fine. I'm using hot press paper. You're going to need watercolor, and you're going to need a pencil and a ruler with millimeters. If you're using a 9x12 paper with me, then you can follow along and do the markups. I like to make a nice grid. So at the 38 mark, 38 millimeter mark, 76, 114, 152 was a mistake, but yeah, there she goes. So I just make a little mark, and then I do the same thing on the other side of the paper to connect my marks so the line is even and symmetrical. I found if I just do one point and then try to do the ruler in a straight line, I never can do it in a straight line. So this is just me marking so I know every 38 millimeters where it is on the ruler, because I do this for the other direction too. If you're not using 9x12 paper, don't do this because it won't match up to what I'm going to be doing. If you're using other size paper or you don't want to do the grid, you could just freestyle and just follow along as best you can with just kind of where you think I am on the paper as we do the sketching, and you can fast forward to that part. So you want to make sure that all of your marks are very light, because we're going to erase this later. So you could use the lightest color pencil and just do very faint. So I connect my little notches and make my straight lines. And then we're going to do this exact same thing on the other direction. So this, we're going vertically, and we'll do the same thing horizontally. Also, it'll be every 38 millimeters, make a notch, then go another 38 millimeters, make another notch, and then you do on the same on the other side of the paper, and then you connect all of your notches to create a nice even square grid. Okay, so now we're going to start the actual sketching, but for the sake of the video and of following along, I'm going to go on the vertical A, B, C, D, E, F, and on the horizontal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you'll know where I am referring to when we're doing different boxes. For instance, if we're drawing something in C5, that's where you'll know to go in your grid. Again, if you're not using a grid, that's totally fine. Just follow along with the shapes that I'm doing and check your proportions are about the same. Okay, now we get to drawing, which is the fun part. Well, painting is probably more fun, but whatever. So at A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going to mark the top of the head, and that's about the middle of the box. So this is, we're just going to kind of loosely draw some like spiky hair. The lion, which I will include the reference photo as well. The lion kind of has a weird mohawk mane because he's adolescent. It's not a full-grown mane. So now we're in A6, and then we're going to draw the ear. So it kind of arches between A6, kind of hugs A7, and a little corner goes down into B7. And the last little corner of B7 is just going to get kind of nicked and go down into C7 for the cheek. So we're just kind of emphasize that ear again. It rounds really nicely, going from A5 into A6, drops down into B6, B7, And then in B6 is the little shadow of the ear. I like marking the shading for when I go in with my watercolors. I'll kind of know where I want my certain points to stop and be lighter and darker. So now we're just going to kind of outline the cheek starting in B5, B6, just going diagonal. And that's just kind of the border, just barely getting into C. And kind of goes all the way diagonal in B6, I believe. And then we're just kind of going back over to the other ear. So now we're going to be on A, 1, 2, 3, down to B. It's B3 actually, is where the ear is going to start in that top corner. And I like to just get the general outline of the head before I go into detail. So we're just going to arch in the top of B3 to the bottom of B3, going into C a little bit. So we're in C4 is kind of the very top, and C4 is where the ear ends. Rounding out the top of B4, and then going right into the mohawk. B4 and B5. So now we're just adding some bulk to the mane, kind of over the ear. B3 kind of dips down just a little bit outside of the ear. At very most left corner of B3, kind of almost going into B2. So in the bottom corner of B2, where it starts to round out. Getting into C2, going down into D1. So you're starting in the top middle of C2, and then you want to have that end in the bottom corner of C2 into D1. And that's kind of where the back ends. So now going on the right side of the face, the cheek, and D7, I believe. Yep, D7, rounding down. And we're just kind of going to the arm. So, bottom of the page. So we're gonna kind of get into the chin area. So in E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be where we're working on the chin. So now we're just gonna round out and down and over. It's kind of like a square shape but with rounded edges. Going up. So now we're in D5. We're going to be making a mouth. Kind of going down and over to D6. Down into E5. So that cheek that's in D5 is just kind of rounded, and that's going to sweep up into C5. And the nose is in D5 and 6. So it's kind of going to be shaped within those little boxes. Going up and starting on the nose, the lip, kind of going to the middle of the square, the D5 square, and then crossing into the upper corner of D6. So now you can just kind of take your time and go through and clear up some things, erase a little bit, highlight the areas, make sure everything's kind of making sense and leveling out. See, I'm just trying to make the mouth a little bit even. Fade a little bit and just make sure everything's kind of starting to line up and take shape. So now with the cheek and chin, we're just gonna be in E6 and just kind of swoop down a little bit and get the profile of the face. Kind of making that connection between E5 and E6. So now I'm going to make the connection to the cheek at the top point of D6, kind of in the middle of that square, and just softly and roundly connect it to our previous section of the bottom part of D6. And going back where we had previously highlighted the nose. So it's at a slight angle, face is tilted, so the right corner of the nostril is going to be a little bit higher than the left corner of the nostril. We're going to be doing the left side outline of the face, starting in B4 and just kind of swooping down. Now we're in C and kind of hugging the line between 3 and 4 as we drop down, and then slowly connect it, kind of round it out softly to meet near where the chin is. Now we just want to make sure we're having some dimension. We're going to fill that all in with color to add depth, but I like to kind of know where that's coming from. So connecting the C5 and 6 in a rounded arched way and keeping it slightly tilted to the left. And that'll help us, so we're making sure our proportions and our eyes are level and we don't want it too exact because the head is tilted. So this kind of is just setting a reminder. Okay, so the eyes are very important. It's the most important part of a painting, in my opinion. So we're at the very top left corner of C6. Now lion's eyes, they're not human shaped, so this is the shape that it's kind of drops lower in the front near the nose. They have like these long tear duct kind of things, and then it comes up at an angle. So to make sure that your size is all correct, it should start at the left corner of C6 and 5, that line, and then it's going to be as wide as about halfway through the C6 box. And it's only going to be as low as about a third of the way down. So the eye is a third of the way down in height and about halfway through in width. So we see the pupil is just in that top left corner of the eye. This is kind of going to be different for everyone. I'd go pretty light on the pupil, lighter than I went here, until you do both eyes, and then you can kind of make sure it's all even. So where the whiskers are, it doesn't go straight across, it kind of arches down in the left corner of the cheek and then goes up and swings kind of up towards the nostril. So this is going to be on both sides, starting at the nostril and then kind of pulling up and away towards the cheek. So now doing the left eye, starting in C4 in the top quarter of that square. It's going to go into C5 a little bit. So see here, I went way too dark with the pupil, so now I have to redo that. So it is best to just go a little lighter with the eyes, because you do have to get them level, and even if you're following what I'm doing closely, everything is going to be a little bit different on your own canvas or paper. So here I noticed that the eye was too low and it really needed to go up into the B square a little bit and just kind of graze it, and then go down into the C. So angling it down just slightly, we want it almost at a 45-degree angle from where the right eyeball is. So that's in C4. So again, the bottom right, the center of the eye, dips significantly lower than the outside of the eye, and they have those like long tear ducts, and it's kind of angled. So you want to keep looking at your right eye and making sure you're mirroring that pretty significantly. I kind of like draw out little lines and make sure I'm doing it at the right angle. So the pupil is pretty easy for the left eye because it's exactly on the C4 to C5 line. That's where it starts. And then the size, you just want to make it on the smaller size, obviously, but just compare it to the right pupil that you've already done. And with the depth of the eyeball, that's all going to be taken care of when we do shading and add color. But here you can see they're mirrored quite accurately with each other. So if you can just kind of play with that a little bit and get it to match both eyes, so it looks not like it's looking exactly at the camera, because that's not what's going on in the reference photo, but it's just the eyes are concentrated on something slightly to the left of the camera. So now I'm just kind of going through and shading a little bit and indicating areas that I'm going to be focusing on for darkness, some areas where the fur is tufted a little bit because we're going to have some depth there. So just kind of compare it with the reference photo and kind of go through with some of the the ear and the fur areas. Now with the ear, it looks like we're staying for the most part in B4 in the bottom left corner. And again, just mirroring it with what you've already done on the right side for size. That should help everything stay pretty consistent. And I'm just kind of going to go through with the mane and point out areas that I'd like to just emphasize. I do want some of the pencil to shine through, but not all of it. So some areas you can go a little darker if you want the pencil to shine through, or you can go very lightly and erase later once you've added your paint and colors. So I'm using Winsor and Newton watercolors. They are my absolute favorite. But whatever paint set you have, just try to match the colors as closely to what I'm pulling out as you can. You're going to want a dark brown, you're going to want a burnt sienna, almost like an orangish color, a yellow ochre. I like just like a standard yellow too. And then some like blues, reds. I think the red I'm using here is a crimson, but whatever you have. And then there's Russian blue and ultramarine. So watercolor, a little goes a long way, and layering is very important. So you don't want a ton of paint. Also, it's not cost effective to just dunk it on there because, again, a little goes a long way, and you're just using this kind of also to mix. So you want to get an idea of what you're mixing first and kind of color match before you really commit also. So I just like to lay everything out and then kind of make as I go and color match from there. So I'm putting everything down. Sometimes I use all of the paint, sometimes I don't, but I really don't like having to go and grab, so I'm just putting everything down. And I like to do it on the outer perimeter of the wax paper. You could use just like even food wax paper. I have artist ones, but the food one works just fine. And I do all the primary on the outside, and then I blend on the inside to make my color. So here I'm using a yellow ochre, and I believe that's burnt sienna. And that's the base of most of the lion color. But I also, when I shade, I'll put in blues and greens and reds. But that's going to be kind of like the baseline where you just want to lay that down in the main. The yellow ochre mixed with burnt sienna. So here I'm going to go in with just burnt sienna mixed with a nice crimson color, just a good red, and going under the chin part of the mane. There's also going to be some like low lights, I guess is what you would call it, parts of the mane that I want to accent with this and have it bleed into the yellow a little bit. But the paint kind of has to dry a little bit more before we do any like true shading. But I do like the bleeding look with the darker colors fading in. So going back, so you can see the top of the mane has already started to dry and how light it looks. So now we're going to do the right side of the mane again with that yellow color, just the yellow ochre and burnt sienna mixed together, and kind of connect it where we did the burnt sienna red combination. Taking the yellow and just kind of highlighting a little bit around the eyes and the forehead. Has these like little expressive eyebrows. And a lot of this is going to have to dry before you go back and revisit the forehead again. But just kind of laying down the base with the yellow. And then as that dries, we'll be able to go back in. So now I'm going to take purple and burnt umber. If you don't have purple, mix some red and blue and add burnt umber or a nice brown color, whatever you have on the darker side, and doing some of the more intense shading that's not fully on the mane but more like the back, because he kind of had like a grayish color, but I like the way the purple looks and shades. Now going in just under the chin where we had done that orange color and adding just some like wisps of purple, and that's going to be the color we use for most of the shading and shadows. So now that it's starting to dry a little bit, and then go back again, and it gets a little bit darker every time you do it and layer it. So you kind of wait for it to dry a little bit, and go back in darker. And you can kind of pick and choose the areas where you want to highlight this in the mane, because it's kind of throughout. Each tuft of hair has like its own little shadow. Picking little sections and doing little wisps of dark. And the cheek now that some of that's dried, with just that base yellow that we started with, because again, you want that color kind of throughout. That's the starting point, and we'll do shading later, but you have to wait for things to dry before you. That's kind of why it's good to work on a different part of the body or a different part of the painting and then revisit, so that way nothing bleeds and you still have enough definition to where. So now we're just going back in with your lines, your shadows, pure, your just eyes, the yellow ochre, that like without it turning into like a muddy yellow color, not the bright yellow color, and just doing some little acts of depth around the nose and the outer cheek. It's going to be a lot lighter on the inner nose part of the mouth, and then it's going to be a little darker so you have depth on the outside, and that way the center of the face is really coming out at you, which is what we want. So now I'm taking that orange burnt sienna, again, a bright color, maybe even mixed with a little bit of red, but that like orangey color, and going and adding some depth to the mane. So now we have some layers there. We have the light yellow, we have a little bit of purple, we have some orange. And I'm starting on the right side of the face. And now I'm going in with burnt umber, just that brown, to go through some darker, deeper shading near the ear, the left ear, and around the side of the face. So this is going to happen on both sides, but we're just starting here because the right side probably is still a little bit wet, but the left side, we don't have any paint near the ear, so we can kind of get in there. So taking that burnt umber to where we put burnt sienna, so the brown going straight to the orange, closest to the cheek, and that way it kind of, you can see, naturally bleeds in to the orange. So you have a nice transition that's not so harsh. There's sometimes where you want the harsh lines, and there's sometimes where you do want it to bleed, so it looks a bit more natural and shaded. So under the eye, I'm taking that purple brown mixture. I added a little bit of blue to it, and I'm putting that just under the eyes, around the nostrils. So this is the darkest points in our painting. I'm going to be right there, loosely tracing. At this point, it's not exact, kind of interpreting where the shading is based on the reference photo. I like doing this with a purple. I like it to be kind of colorful. But if you wanted it to just be a little bit more monotone, you can do that same shading with a dark brown. So the lion's eyes are like a yellow-orange, so I want those to really stand out. So I'm going with burnt sienna mixed with a yellow, a true yellow. So in the center of the forehead, we're going to do a little blue mixed with that purple and a little bit of brown. So you can see in the bottom left how that color it looks, and it looks, yeah, purplish blue. And instead of doing a gray, I like to have it be more of a blue color. And just, it kind of goes into the base of the mane. He has like a weird little faux hawk because he's a pubescent male, so he doesn't quite have the full growth of a mane yet, which is kind of cute. But so I'm just doing some of that shading. It's quite dark at the top. A lot of the lions, they aren't, you know, like Lion King where it's like an orange mane. Most of them have a lot of browns and grays and blacks in their mane. So instead of using a black, I'm going in with blue purple. And for shading the ear, we had the brown in there, and now I'm adding some blue shading. That right ear is pretty dark, and there's lots of little like wisps of hair in there, so it can just kind of be a little bit chaotic. Added a little bit more blue to here, and there's obviously a shadow behind the ear, so you want to make sure you focus on that. And this is like a pretty vibrant blue purple color, which I really like. So I kind of am like chaotically spreading out the shading throughout the mane, and then going in more detail of like the precise places where there's shading, like right behind the ears, in the ear, and at the mouth. The nose is also going to get a pretty dark shading. So now this is a little bit more blue going in. Now that you see, like, you kind of wait for things to dry, and then a little more detail to get even darker. So just not throughout the exact spots, but the areas that are a little bit more deep. So with the ear now, I'm going in. I mixed red with burnt umber and burnt sienna. And so you see it's a little bit more of that like rust color. It's more natural. If I was going to do this again, I probably would do that first before the blue in the ear, because it gets darker. It's easier to go from light to dark than from dark to light. And the orangey color is lighter than the purple. So now we're taking, again, it's that red mixed with burnt sienna, so red, orange, and yellow ochre. And it should be like a pretty vibrant orangey color, but not like a natural orange, but vibrant. And just kind of going through and highlighting some of the spots we missed, or that are have a little more depth but aren't necessarily shaded. So the light yellow that we went in first, that's all the highlighted areas. You do want to go lightest areas with watercolor to your darkest areas. So with oil paints, it's typically the opposite. I go darker and then add my highlights later, because the highlights can be like really saturated and kind of take over. But with watercolor, it is the opposite. So that's why we started with the yellow. Again, if I was to do this again, I would go from the yellows, oranges, browns, and end with my purples and blues, but I mean, it turned out fine. And I'm taking the brown, which is like a burnt umber, mixed with a little burnt sienna, and just shading the top of the eye. So it's not necessarily an eyelid, it's just the eyeball is a little darker from shading on top. And then taking that brown and just going over the darker areas and the shadows on the face. And you can see the reference photo for more detail on that. You want the watercolors to be pretty wet, your brushes, because you don't want it to be overly saturated. It's better to go in lighter and then again go back and just layer it so you can see the paint in the top left corner, how it's, I'm not taking like a glob of paint and putting it on, just getting the brush wet enough and then mixing it in and just kind of throwing it on loosely the areas. And then for that more detailed work, we'll go in with maybe heavier on the paint, maybe a thinner brush, and kind of get into the detail work that way. So I took a pretty red crimson and mixed it with a little bit of burnt sienna, burnt umber. So it's definitely like a darker rust color. And I'm going in again heavier on the paint than the other areas. You see in the ear where we had it like a little thinner. And this is more like a highlight, or well, opposite, like shading with the bright colors. And I'm layering that on top of the blue so it kind of blends in and is a more natural shadow. You see once you put the red on top, that shadow does look more natural and like a color you'd see in actual wildlife. So as you watch the painting dry, you see some of those shadows are less noticeable, so it's good to go in with a little bit heavier color, a little darker blue, and it emphasizes the shadow a little bit more. So I did use black here. I probably would not do that again. I typically don't like using black paint. I think you should take your burnt umber and mix it with a Russian blue and just apply a heavier dollop of that on the ear for that shade, that shadow and shading, and just go lighter on the water, heavier on the paint to create that same shadow. Now we're just adding little shadow dots. I used like the brownish red color and adding the little whiskers. They're so cute. And again, I would not use black for this. Use your burnt umber mixed with blue, a Russian blue preferably, and then just go a little bit heavier on the paint and lighter on the water. But there's still shading within the nose, so I would start light, which you see I'm doing here with brown. I'd start light and then go darker because it is lighter on the top because of the way the light is hitting his face, and it's a little darker at the bottom of the nose. So now is the scary part where you do the pupils and everything has to just be just so. So now we're just again going through with that burnt umber blue mixture, more on the umber than the blue side, or if you're using black, you can be doing that as well. And finding the areas that are most dark that maybe we missed, a little detailed work, like the tufts of the hair. There's some like waves in the mane that we could add. There's a little bit of depth in the faux hawk on the top of the head. Just kind of look through and see where you want to add some squiggles and some lines, and a little bit of darkness wherever you feel like maybe you missed. So now we're gonna just add some more water to that same mixture of color, that darkness, and we're gonna go through in the areas that need a little less detail, but also you want shading, and do some broader swoops with your brush. So again, more water, but the same color of burnt umber and Russian blue, or if you're using black, black, and go through and do the bigger or the bigger low lights or bigger shadows that you want to add under the chin, at the back, at the little parts in the mane that are that probably could use a little bit more depth, the area behind the ears, and just kind of intuitively see where you're missing some shadows and go through and add some more. So now you want to take that burnt sienna, that umber, the ochre, and make kind of like a bright-ish orange color, which we have used before. But you want some red, burnt sienna, some ochre, and go through and you're going to find the areas that maybe need a little bit more vibrance, a little more color, without compromising your highlights. So the areas you want to not touch is just the tip right above his nose, right around the mouth. We want that highlighted because that's where the sun is hitting. But everywhere else that feels a little flat, add that bright orange color, and like right above the nose and any areas in the mane that you want maybe a little more to stand out. And then leave the rest, the highlight areas like the eyebrow, right under the eye, around the nose and around the mouth, pretty untouched with paint. So I like to add some bright primary colors in the background. I don't really like a lot of white on the canvas, but if you want to stop here, you can totally feel free to do that. I'm taking some of those primary colors that we used and mixed with more natural colors like your umbers and your ochres, and just going in with the reds, the purples, the blues, the bright yellows, and then that kind of has it like draws your eye to those colors in him as well. It makes those colors kind of pop out. This can be done pretty messy. You can splatter the paint. I like that look. Kind of bleeding together a little bit. But however you'd like to do it, this is up for your artistic interpretation of this. I'm kind of going with like a sunset color scheme, so the purples, reds, and oranges. But you can kind of do whatever you want here. You can go all yellow, you can go all blue, you can go and leave it as out white and have him just kind of be stark in comparison. Totally up to you. So this next thing that I like to do, you also can opt out, but make sure you're using a clean brush, clean water, and just take a tiny dollop of white watercolor paint. We're just going to add a little dot to the upper right corner next to the pupil, and that's going to be the light spot. You can add it anywhere. Maybe you need a little bit more highlight, or just leave it as is. So here is my finished product. Please DM me, send me your finished product if you painted along with me. I would love to see. And yeah, please come back for the next one. Like, subscribe, share, appreciate all of it. And I hope you had fun painting with me.